Hi, everyone. Rebecca Nelson with you once again. I believe this is our 43rd virtual tasting broadcast that we've done. We did the math a little bit ago. And it's also a fabulous wine that we're trying tonight is our 2012 Estate Reserve Merlot. Now, I've been at Becker for about 6.5 years, and as long as I've been there, it's the only estate Merlot that we've ever bottled all by itself. It's really fantastic. I'm excited for everybody to try this one. Tonight, joining us, we have Dr. Richard Becker again. We have our winemaker, John Leahy, and we have our general manager, Bret, who I'm going to announce from the very beginning. It is his birthday today, so come on with the happy birthday wishes, everybody. I'll kick it over to the
43rd birthday.
to get everybody started. Happy birthday, Bret. Cheers.
Thanks. Cheers, Rebecca. And you know, it's his 43rd birthday, and this is our 43rd broadcast, and there are 43 balloons in his office that he doesn't know about yet. So.
Perfect.
So, Doc, before we get going, would you care to have a few words to get us going?
Just thinking about this long trip that we're on, and we're now at the 15th week that we've been doing this. 15 weeks in which we've been largely closed. The tasting rooms have been closed. A lot of sequestration for our staff. A lot of illness in our state and our city in San Antonio, and so it's just awareness that we're, as Dr. Fauci said, we're in the first wave, not the second wave of this, and we need to make every effort to be as careful and protected and as protective of people around us as we can be, and I think that's an obvious thing. But anyway, it's been a great treat for me to be part of and to watch kind of the celebration of what we're trying to do as winemakers for the last, now into the 4th month. And I salute everybody on our staff. I know this was Joe's idea initially, but it's been, we've all been part of it, and you all have done a wonderful job. Thank you.
Well, I'll drink to that, and I will concur. Everybody has pulled together. I think we're doing, everyone is doing a great job, and I am happy to be part of it as well. But I want to get back to the crux to the issue tonight, which is not the wine. It's making fun of Bret and his birthday. So, so apparently he's sequestered somewhere that will remain nameless. Yeah. So Bret, we all do wish you a happy birthday. And to get us kicked off, why don't you give us your impressions of the wine?
Well, so this Estate Merlot, I think, is something that came about in 2012, and obviously there's a lot of things, and they were asking me, like, who do you want to be on tonight? And I said, I have a lot of stories about the 2012 vintage specifically, but also this block that, you know, I took care of from the first time I was at Becker in the back vineyard. And when we taste this, I have a little bit of a jaded, you know, I have to excuse myself for a certain tints that, you know, we actually prune this back from the viticulture side so harsh that the vineyard guys wouldn't do it until I went back there and started doing it. And then they followed me. They're like, this guy's really not crazy. He's telling us to knock it off to 1 bud and really reduce the crop down to like 2 tons per acre. And that was the first year that we did this on this specific block. And I have a huge, I guess, jaded tasting on this. So I'm gonna at least I'm gonna set that out for the start. But I do think that this wine is, you know, we were tasting before we went live on air, and Dr. Becker said, man, this wine is really good, and I think we're spot on with that. So I'll let that part go on, I guess.
Okay, well, and just so you know, you've gotten about 30 birthday wishes so far on Facebook.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I always do, like, when I tell my kids and they're doing something, I'm like, all you have to do is tell people to send money. That'll be fine. We'll make it go to a good cause.
That's a little birthday. So Doc, before we get into the particulars on the wine, Doc, would you care to give us your opinion? I'm
going to read. Occasionally, I get to write what's on the back of the bottle, and I'm proud of what I wrote here. I said, these Merlot vines were planted by the Becker family 20 years ago. This was in 2012. In granitic fields, first surveyed by Texas Ranger John Coffey Hayes before the Civil War. This exceptional fruit and wine was rediscovered and produced by our winemaker John Leahy in 2012. Kudos. And I think that John discovered Merlot in our production in Texas. No one has made Merlot like you have, John. And this is just an incredible example to to come out of a vineyard in Gillespie County, Texas, to make a Merlot that tastes very much like a wonderful Bordeaux Merlot. I think you've done it. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. And I would love to take 110% of the credit, but I think Bret already hit the crux on the head there with the severe pruning and down to about 2.5 tons an acre, and the increased concentration of that fruit.
Good.
Easy to deal with when it's handed to you. So Rebecca, you're with us. I've got to get your opinion, and then we're going to come back to Doc because he doesn't get away with just reading the back. He's got to taste and stuff. But Rebecca, what do you get when you taste this?
Well, this Merlot is, and I think Dr. Becker hit the nail right on the head when he said, this isn't your typical Texas Merlot. I absolutely adore this Merlot. It does, to me, hit all of those Bordeaux notes. I get the dried cherries on this. I get sort of a warm spice on the finish of it. And I just really love, again, we're talking about a 2012 wine, and there's still so much depth of flavor to this wine. It's not one note. It hasn't lost all of its fruit. It's showing remarkably well. I really think you did a fantastic job on this one for sure.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just got our first question, John. Why the cork in the bottle? Well, that's to keep the wine inside the bottle. So when they put it upside down in the case, it doesn't come out. It works really well that way. I'm assuming you're talking about the all natural cork on there. If you expound upon your question, I can give you a more detailed answer, but why the cork in the bottle is going to get you my smart alecky response. We chose the natural cork, of course, because it's a reserve wine, and we planned on it being in the bottle for quite some time. So Bret, back to the 2012 vintage and harvest. You said you had a few good stories, and then I'm going to jump right into the composition of the wine.
Well, I think historically that block in the back, and we try to focus on vineyards, on Wednesday, and I think that block in the back that the Beckers originally planted in 1992, this was actually a replant of a block of Viognier that died of Pierce's. That in 2012, I think it was on about its 5th leaf or maybe 6th leaf, and so what I remember about that vintage is that 12 was kind of like one of those years again that there wasn't this epic fail or epic greatness, I don't think, but when we went back into that block, we knew that the Merlot needed to have about 5 or 6 more leaves per shoot position to try to get it ripe. And it's not like the previous vintages of this younger block were awful. It was just it was just kind of an average wine. And so that I remember going and I talked to Dr. Becker and I said, hey, look, I want to do something kind of drastic in here and cut this back, and instead of 2 bud or 3 budding it, we're going to go back down to 1 bud and take it way down. And he said, whatever you think makes the best wine. And by the way, that's usually our answer. It's actually always the answer. It's not a matter of how many tons we're trying to make or trying to save this much money on a barrel program. But I really do think that this one particular time, I told you, it was so crazy because I told the guys, go prune that back to 1 bud, and they just refused to do it. And we went back through there, and I said, what am I going to have to do?
That.
Yeah. What are we gonna have to do to make this work? And they said, when you do it, we'll do it. And I said, all right, fine. So I went through there, and so I always tell the story. And Rebecca, I think you've heard me tell this, that I pruned that vineyard right for about 4 or 5 hours with those guys. And so when this wine came out, I remember we were sitting there talking about, well, what are we gonna do how much do you want to charge for it? And I remember clear as a bell. I was like, I remember I had to help prune it, so it should be worth at least $60 or $80 a bottle. And that's always the standard answer,
Right.
And that's where we came up.
Were involved in the vineyard on it at all is at least $80 a bottle, at least.
Yeah.
Well, when I got there, so I wasn't there for the pruning, but I remember you telling me how much difficulty we had getting it pruned down there, and to me it was like, well, that makes perfect sense to go down, one per. That's Merlot, but and then you started explaining the differences. Hey, look, there's not 40,000 acres of this. There's 4 acres of it. But the fruit, when it came in, and we started tasting this. One of the things we actually did the tasting and final blend on this. It's only 11 barrels, by the way. So the Merlot spent most of its life in 40%. Well, actually, this particular lot spent its life in 100% new oak, and it was 50-50 split between French and American. Now, we brought it out, and I actually added just an extraordinarily tiny amount of Cabernet Franc to this. And we put it back to barrel about a year before we bottled it. So this this wine did not get bottled until end of July 2015. And then we released it a few months later. I think it was early 2016 when we actually decided to release it. So I remember, wasn't there an argument about, was it the December or the February wine club around there?
It didn't get to go out. That was the thing. Dr. Becker loved it so much. He said, we can't send it out. I want to use it. And we used it for dinners and for events and for luncheons. And it wasn't technically released for sale, really, for at least 6 or 8 months after it was in bottle and actually on the property. And then we were allowed to start letting it be tasted in the wine club room. And then we were allowed to start letting it be tasted on certain days. Dr. Becker loved this wine. And like you said, there wasn't much of it. So he's been real hesitant to actually let it go.
Yeah, we made 230 cases, I think, is the total that we bottled. You know, I had to quick write. The reason I keep looking at this bottle, and now I realize what the cork question was, why the cork in the empty bottle. And that was so I just put it in there, force of habit, guys. Bottled on 7/23/15, harvest was at the end of August in 2012. So it spent 35 months in barrel before we bottled it. So Doc, back to you real quick. I want your tasting impression of the wine as it sits now. And then I'll
do it. But John, my memory about what made this wine so great was the maceration, the long cold soak you did on this wine. I mean, I'm glad we got the vineyard pruned, but I really think this is a winemaking success. And
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. It was funny though. Bret did have an extraordinarily intense interest in how the wine was treated.
It could be.
Yeah, but yeah, no, we did. We cold soaked it for quite some time, and I also did an extended maceration post fermentation, where we actually heated the tank up a couple of degrees a day post dry until ML was well kicked in, and then we pressed it and then put it to barrel. So it was almost ML complete by the time we pressed it. And that's an extraordinarily risky thing to do with anything but perfectly healthy fruit in a perfect environment. So it really does take an awful lot of attention and time and detail. And unfortunately, this was my first harvest with Becker, and the first time that our crew got to deal with me as the winemaker. And so by the end of harvest in 2012, they were convinced I was flipping nuts about the different things that we were doing. I don't think that opinion's changed, but the guys haven't quit. They're still there. So, you know, but
about the assessment of the wine, John. I still think what I thought when I first tasted it. I love Bordeaux, and I love really good, rich, complex Bordeaux's. And I remember the minute I tasted this wine. In fact, you said, "Come over here and taste this. You're not going to believe it." Yeah. And I didn't. But it was just all the characteristics of the leather and the forest floor and the herbal notes and the dark fruit.
Well, something I've noticed, and I will answer. Somebody just asked real quick, and Bret, I know you're trying to jump in there. Somebody asked, what is ML? And I apologize. It's malactic fermentation. So it's a secondary bacterial ferment that the wine goes through. It converts malic to lactic acid that rounds the wine. It gives that noted, on some really large red wines, you'll get a hint of almost butteriness that comes from the byproduct of malactic fermentation. For this, it just mellows the malic acid down a little bit and allows the fruit to really come forward. So we go through 2 ferments during that process. I'm sorry, Bret, you were trying to jump in.
I think disconnected, but I'll give my little 2 cents because I avoided the question about the actual wine. I think that what this wine shows is the ability of us to produce a wine that'll age for a very long time. I think that the maturity of this, and when we do library tastings, and this is library 2012 week, that we got to go down there. And again, it's a hard day when we have to pick wines out of the cellar and test them, make sure that that's something that we're going to send out. But I think that 12, number one, it was John's first year. So we wanted to give John an homage to, he was talking about that craziness, and most people that work there, like, this dude is crazy. He is still crazy. That's not debatable. Like, there's one thing that you can count for sure, that a winemaker that loves to, be a scientist and also an artist is something that it's a split personality in the world. And I think that the only people.
Are you accusing me of being bipolar?
Yes. Yeah. I think the split personality in the world only exists in a few rooms, and winemaking bottle is one of them. So, cheers.
Cheers. Somebody just asked how long from inoculation to press. I don't have the exact days. I can tell you that it was well over 3.5 weeks. So I know we weren't pressing until the end of September. So it was quite a long time. You consider that I had almost 10 days of cold maceration, and I think it was about 7 or 8 days for primary to complete. We did bring it up. The temperature on primary hit about 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 84 to 85, which is about maximum that I'm comfortable with. And if Rachel were on here, she'd say, no, it needs to be lower because everything gets stuck at 85. And she's not altogether wrong, but not everything gets stuck at that temperature. The beautiful thing about this is a small lot. We actually got to play with it, or I got to play with it and keep it in barrel for almost 36 months. And that is also another risky behavior, keeping red wine in a barrel for a long time. You've got to make sure those barrels are good, healthy, and topped, and nobody messes with them. And so doing 10 barrels that way is a heck of a lot easier than doing 1,000. So that in itself was kind of fun. But it really, I actually, oddly enough, was inspired not just from my winemaking background to do this. It was an article I read the first month I worked at Becker from another Texas winery, basically downplaying the importance of Bordeaux in Texas and how anybody who plants it or uses it doesn't know what they're doing. And that kind of fired my Irish up a little bit. So
I'm glad it did, John.
Yeah. So here's looking at that particular gentleman who I've met multiple times. Cheers,
Jim. Yeah.
So I guess back to the wine. I'm trying to look here at pictures. So Bret, if there's one thing that you remember about the 2012 harvest for our estate that was both good and trying, what would it be?
Well, I think that, again, trying to turn these blocks around that needed more nutrients and trying to get them to grow more leaves. I mean, obviously we were watering like crazy. And by the way, I almost think, people ask me, what's the normalcy for your watering program? And I'm like, oh my God, there's no normalcy in anything that we do, because we don't live in a climate that is, normal in any way, shape, or form. But I do remember that both the Cab and the Merlot from that vintage, the 2 blocks in the back vineyard that are across from each other, the right side or the north side is the Merlot, and the south side is the Cabernet. Both of those just kind of came up in that year and said, this is what, this is where we are, this is where we want to be. And they just were really good, and they've been good really since then. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that, we're talking about this Estate Merlot, how did it come to be, and why did we make this one bottling of, less than 300 cases? And I do think it goes back to when we walk around and we're tasting out the barrels and we find an exceptional lot, we're going to continue to do that as long as the wine kind of wants to present itself in that way. And by the way, 12 was also the vintage that we made great Merlots from all over the state. If you remember, that was the Quattro Stagioni rebirth in 12, because every time we went to the Merlot barrels, we were tasting, we're like, holy cow, this one's good, that one's good, that one's good. And I just remember that across the state, Merlot was very happy in that year.
It was, and we did a lot of things to it, including naming each individual berry from this vineyard. So the family tree that went into this glass. So the thing that I remember about 12 was the incredible straight across the board quality, but the abundance. And coming off of the 2011, though I wasn't here, dealing with some of the 2011 fruit that my predecessor left in barrel from the drought year, and seeing the concentration difference. So that was kind of fun. But 2012 was an ideal year until 2017. It was the best year at the winery. And then 2017 comes along, and you get 2 years like that in a decade, and I really do feel like we're making wine the way it should be made. year by year. It's changing. You know, not every year we're going to have an Estate Merlot. Not every year we're going to have a Reserve Petite Syrah from the estate, but we will try. No, Harold was not in this wine. So that was another question. Okay, so I have to say something, and I hope nobody takes this as a derogatory, but I decanted this over an hour ago. When I first poured this wine out in the decanter, I got a lot of the not so nice toasted notes that can happen from a very old wine that needs to breathe. That was normal. Then it went through this phase for about 40 minutes. I was like, is the fruit gone? Is it gone? And about an hour and 20 minutes, it started really coming out. So this wine definitely needs to be decanted. And what I'm getting now are some great herbaceous notes.
That's what me too. Yeah.
Earth, and there's a light amount of red fruit for this. And so it does go to show too, and this is for my boss, you can age a wine in barrel without losing fruit. So the argument that I have with a particular doctor whom I work for, and you guys might know him, is I'm afraid this fruit is going to disappear in the barrel. And I'm like, it's only 8 months old, it'll come back. So, but yeah, I'm very happy with the way this turned out. Okay, food. Rebecca, what do you think on food pairing?
Starting with me, really?
Yes, I'm putting you on the hot seat. Look at you in that leather armchair with a beautiful background. People are not going to think we have a very hard job.
I think that was already what people thought, John. I don't think me sitting in a leather chair made it worse. Let's see, food with this. Like you have said, as this decant, I'm getting more herbaceous notes and more of those sort of forest floor and things like that I love. So I'm gonna go with either lamb or maybe like a smoked pork loin with rosemary.
Mm-hmm. You're gonna go with lamb on this. After you're the one who gives me hell about putting lamb with everything.
Lamb doesn't go with every wine.
It sure as hell does.
It'll be like our dessert wine, and he goes, pairs well with lamb.
It's not my fault. Okay, Bret. So what would you pair with this?
Lamb or tenderloin.
Lamb or tenderloin. See, Rebecca, lamb does go with a lot of stuff.
How about this, John? Duck. I'll pair it with duck.
You know what? A pounded duck breast would be really nice with this. You're spot on that with that. Okay, Dr. Becker, no triple cream brie. What else?
What I grew up eating in Abilene was fresh shelled black-eyed peas and cornbread. And the black-eyed peas were cooked with a piece of ham hock. Everything was delicate, understated, and that with the cornbread taken together with this wine would be my desert island meal.
Well, I have to agree with you. You know, it's funny. Jody made us a Texas caviar a few nights ago. So
Texas caviar.
Yeah, exactly. I like that idea. I'm going to go out and get a little south for everybody here, but I'm going to go with shrimp and grits.
Sure.
One, it happens to be a very comfort food favorite of mine, and two, I really do think the Merlot goes well with seafood, but that's a personal idiosyncrasy. Most people may not find that to be true, but it has to have some fat to it. So in order for the red wine to pair well, it's that, or I can't argue with lamb or duck. I think those are great choices. So absolutely fantastic. Anything
It's actually your fault that I love duck so much, John. You're the one that introduced me to duck and wine pairing, and now I'm ruined forever.
Right.
The backstory to that is that whenever Rebecca would go to ask John to write a pairing for the Wine Club newsletter, he just kept writing, "This goes well with duck. This goes well with duck," and that's where the joke comes in. Just like I say tenderloin.
Yeah, it's pretty much it right there. So the other thing, we just got a question too. Somebody has several of our 2012s. They have a Prairie Roti, the Grenache Reserve, our port, and this wine, and they want to know if those will be equally as good. And I think if they were well stored, they should. The Prairie Roti is very light, so you want to decant it, you want to chill it and decant it. The Grenache Reserve, I still have some of that as well, and it is particularly nice. it will have, when you first open it, for about the first 45 minutes, it'll have almost a burnt edge to it that will blow off. That's indicative of a hydrogen sulfide that happens in an enclosed environment. So let that blow off. That's why decanting is also very necessary. Some older wines need to breathe. So that's very, very important. Anyway, the other thing I'm going to tell people right off the bat, if you pair wine with something, do not use a wine that you're not willing to put into cooking. Don't cook with wine that you're not willing to drink. You know, they're synonymous. So this wine will actually end up in a little bit of shrimp and grits. I'm just saying. So, I'm not seeing any other questions come up, but I would like to remind people that on Friday, we have an absolutely fantastic wine that we're going to be doing. It's the 2012 Wilmoth Family Vineyards Cabernet Sauvignon. Again, another great showcase wine for the 12. We'll be wrapping up this week with that beautiful wine. Please, if you're going to join us, decant that wine about an hour and a half before we start broadcasting. So pour it into a decanter around 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon. Keep it cool. Don't have to keep it cold. If you do keep it in the fridge after you decant it, pull it out about 20 minutes before we broadcast, and you'll have a perfect glass of wine. So yep. Go ahead,
And then Rebecca, will you talk a little bit about our next week's? I have the Reserve Viognier on Monday, the Culinaria on Wednesday, and then another Culinaria on Friday.
Yes.
But the fun part about this is we're starting to get into some of the stuff that we've just bottled. So you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we actually have, keep a lookout because the next few weeks we're going to have a wine in the week that's a brand new release. So this is kind of a time of year where we start having some of those come out, and we've gotten a lot of bottling done. And so next week we have the 2017 Viognier Reserve to start things out, which is a fantastic wine, spring, summer, fall, winter. It's just a remarkable wine and really great in Texas. And Becker is definitely one of the most well-known for our Viognier production. So that's always going to be a standard. On Wednesday, we're going to do a library release, which is our 2015 vintage of the Culinaria. For those of you that maybe aren't familiar with the Culinaria is a wine that we make every year, and the blend is different every year. And it's typically anywhere from 4 to 6 different varietals that are blended together. And we make that kind of with the understanding that it will be a very food-friendly wine. So we have the 2015 vintage on Wednesday. And then we're actually down to about 3 cases of the 2017 Culinaria. So I'm pretty sure Bret's going to take that and put that in the library. And we are just now releasing the brand new vintage, the 2018 Culinaria. And that just came out this week. And so we're putting that in the tasting for next week on Friday. So you'll get to have a comparison of 3 years difference in that Culinaria blend. And I think it's going to be really remarkable to see. It's got different varietals in it, but kind of the same goal in the taste profile that we want that wine to be. And so I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
We're doing I'm sorry, I did not hear everything. I thought we were doing the Reserve Viognier. We're doing the 17 Culinaria next week instead.
No.
We're out of the 17. So it's going to be the 15 on Wednesday, and we're moving to the brand new release of the 18 on Friday.
Okay. Okay. So 2 Culinarias. Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might have bought the rest of the 17. It's at my house, except for what I saved for Doc.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I had to pull it off the website really quickly because we found out we had so little left. It snuck up on us.
So Rebecca, we got a question on here. Is the Estate Reserve Merlot still available for sale?
Yes, but in very limited quantities. So it is, if you buy it separately, it's $60 per bottle. And I think we're doing a max purchase per person of 3 bottles right now because there is such limited amount.
Okay, perfect. And I think that wraps us up then for what we're doing. I think that we want to, any final words, Doc or Bret, to lead us out?
No, John, I think this was a great wine for you to start your run with us. And I've always admired it. And I'm glad we're getting to taste it today.
I appreciate that. And I'm very happy that it's held up. So,
Me too.
exactly. So
And happy birthday, Bret.
Thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey,
Happy
John,
birthday, Bret. Yes, sir.
Thanks for the birthday wishes, but I also want to mention that we have a great team at the winery, like Doc said, and we're doing the private virtual tasting that we keep forgetting to talk about. But if you guys want to like have 20 of your friends on the Zoom meeting. We can do this, and you can pick any wine in our portfolio, and we'll send it to you and your friends, and one of us or one of our tasting room staff will host that for you. So don't forget about the private virtual tastings.
Yep, and just go to our website. It'll be on there, and call the winery or email the wine club, and they'll hook you up. So everybody at home,
Cheers.
you guys have a great rest of the week. We'll see you on Friday for a beautiful wine. Cheers. Good health.
Cheers to everybody.
Cheers.